This video is going to show you some basic editing tools in Photoshop, some of my favorite ones that I go to pretty regularly off your toolbar and then off the top of your actual program screen where you have your options with file, view, history, image, layer, selections, filters. As you can see here, I'm going to go off the toolbar. I have a little photo shoot here that I did earlier today. As you can see, I have about maybe 40 or 50 pictures here, just different lighting setups, some different poses, some natural lighting, some stage lighting, some low-key or hard lighting. I went ahead and edited some top 25 images that I'm going to go in and do some more editing with. But what you'll see is what I tend to go to on the toolbar. So I have my image in Photoshop. For this one, I don't mind how it's cropped. I'm going to leave it how it is. And over here, normally I would maybe do a crop and I would maybe shrink it down or kind of line up these rule of thirds. I don't mind this one too much because actually the rule of thirds lines up kind of right where her eye is, so that's okay. So just check that. If I need to crop something out, this is where I would do that initially. Then from that point, I'm going to go in and just kind of play around with some lightness and darkness and possibly try the dodge, burn, or sponge tool if I want to pull some color or push some color. Some brush or matching tools to maybe take out some blemishes if you want to match with your eyedropper or skin tone and then brush it out with a nice soft brush. Or even the clone stamp. You can use the clone stamp and also do things like that. But just for starters, I usually go up to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast, and just play around with this a little bit and see what happens. So I can go a little brighter. I can put my contrast down. I can put my contrast up. With this one, I'll probably go contrast up a little bit and then maybe just a little bit brighter. So maybe here. I don't know. We'll see. Contrast down maybe. Say OK. I could even go to Image Adjustments and change it to black and white and see what that looks like. So that kind of adds a softer tone to the overall feel of the image. I could hit OK and then say Image Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast and raise up the brightness, punch up the contrast, or pull down the contrast. Kind of like one like this maybe. So I might even save a version like that. So say OK. Then I'll go to File, Save As, save to my computer. And this one's going to be image number 22, but I'm going to title this one 22BW in the correct folder. Let's make sure I'm in the correct folder here. On my desktop in Deb. Save. Put my file size all the way up. 4.2 is pretty good. Hit OK. I'm actually just going to check and make sure that went in there into the correct folder. So we were working on image 22. So I'm going to scroll down to image 22 and see if we have a black and white one in there somewhere, which we do not. There's black and white 12, 12.2. 25 black and white. All right, let me just close this. Double check really quick. I'm in the right folder. Go back in. Actually, let's do 22. There it is. So there it is. We have it. Might be in here. And there it is. It's saved to this Deb folder. So there's that. Now let's go back and try a couple other things. So I could come back up and you always want to make sure you know where you save it. So it's pretty important. I always like to double check just so I know. So I could Command Z back and just go back to my color version, and then I could play around with this a little bit. I could go to my dodge tool, maybe lower the exposure with the midtones, make the brush size bigger. I could come back in and lighten some areas up. Maybe add some highlights. Those are midtones. Maybe this side I'll add some lights back in, a little bit brighter. Pull this side out a little bit more. Maybe I'll push the other side back a little bit. So I'll come back to the burn tool. It's too big. Let me come back and add some shadows on this side, a little darker around this side, just to pop one side out of the other. It's up to you. I Control Z back just to the original one. Here's our original image to start. Check out another one. So here's one that's more high key, washed out, overexposed, whatever you want to call it. This is one I would probably go ahead and start with cropping. So take my crop tool and just crop up, these parts out. And then maybe crop this one down a little bit to like there. We use the rule of thirds to line up right on the eyes there. Hit check. Now I have some parts here that I want to get rid of because I don't want these little things. So a couple ways you could do it is I could go to my clone stamp, put my clone stamp up, just Alt click, go over, and you can start to clone stamp that out. So you have a nice smooth white background. These little things you might not think about too much when you're working, but they will really clarify the image. All these little detail things will, even that little crinkle right there in the mat, it's something you want to take out. That way your eye is not drawn to anything but the image. There's even a little thing on the ground right there. I'll just take that out. These crinkles in the background, I could come in and just smooth them. You got a little bit of the leg there, so I'm going to Control Z back that. Then even up here, that's up to you. Now I could, from this point, I could try image adjustments. Any of these things, I could go hue saturation. Again, this video is just kind of showing some basic things that I go to start with whenever I begin editing an image. I could do something like this. I could even come to image adjustments, exposure, and now it's like you're back on the camera and you're playing around with the shutter speed and making it overexposed, just like those ones I was just showing you, or maybe a little underexposed. But for this one, I might just do image adjustments, brightness and contrast, put the contrast up, maybe the brightness down, but I kind of don't like the yellowiness. So one thing I could try is I could go to the selection tool. Let's just try select subject and see what happens. See if it works. Yeah, it did pretty good. So that's one way you can select things. You can also just do the quick selection in here and go around and select yourself, or the lasso tool, or select like a square shape. But now I'm just going to select inverse. And now I have the background selected. So now I'm actually going to take that yellowiness out. So I'm going to go to image adjustments and just try black and white at first. I just made it black and white. Actually looks okay. One thing before I usually make different things or do different adjustments, I always go to select and mask first and just make sure I feather the edge a little bit so it's not so sharp around the edge of the subject. Say okay. I could just try image adjustments, hue saturation, and just take the saturation down a little bit so it's just not so yellowy, maybe down to here. I have a nice, it's not completely black and white, but takes out that yellow. Hit okay. And then to unselect, just select deselect. So far we've looked at the dodge and burn and sponge. The sponge really is just to saturate, the dodge lightens, the burn darkens. We tried a color match, so if we do a color match here, I could come over and just match this color. Then I could come back with my brush and actually just do a soft brush, 28%, and I could just brush the background so it's nice and smooth. That has a hard edge, so I'm going to put that hard edge down to there. So now I can just use some blending if I want to just blend this background a little bit and make it nice and smooth. That's something you could try. You can go up here. Now, I would suggest kind of changing colors or taking different selections as you move around the image. So maybe here, you can click, take a shadow side, and then come back in with your brush and come in and just kind of smooth stuff out. Get rid of that little bit of that shadow. You probably don't want to get rid of all the shadow, but maybe just smooth out some of the little imperfections. So for this one, I might finish it up with just saying image adjustments, brightness and contrast. Brightness, down. That looks pretty good. So I might leave that one. File save as. 24. We'll just resave that as 24 since I don't really need the old version. So I'll just save this one as 24. Replace the old version, yeah, because I don't really need the original. If I did something different where I wanted to have multiple images, like say the black and white, or a different version, like a reddish version or a bluish version, then maybe I would say, rename it like 24.1 or 24.2, something like that. But I'm just going to replace this one because I don't want the old version. 3 megapixels, that's good. Let's try a couple more. Let's see, what else do we have with this one? This one we'll try to do black and white. Image adjustments, brightness and contrast, black and white. And then brightness and contrast, maybe raise the brightness up. We're down. It's up to you. Contrast up. Something like that. BW. In there, hit save. 5.9. See you with this one. Now this one I already cleaned up a little bit, but little stuff like this little red thing, like maybe you don't want that little red stool in there. That's something you could either clone stamp out or brush out. So if I took my magnifying glass and just zoomed in, and then let's just try the brush. If I take the brush and match that color, come back to the brush tool, I'll probably want to make the edge a little sharper since it's going up next to something. I could just come in and just kind of brush that out to get rid of that little red piece that maybe just, maybe you just don't want it there. I could probably sharpen that back up a little bit, but I'll just leave that for now. So magnifying glass, fit screen. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you just going through trying to look through the images and do the editing process and see which ones I feel like are working, and then which ones maybe that could be edited out or that I feel are more successful than others. So for this one, it really got washed out when I made it black and white. But if I try to go back to the adjustments, this one maybe I put the contrast down. For more of a low contrast image. As another version. And I could keep going and going, back through the images to figure out which ones I want to kind of work a little bit more on. This one, for instance, I'll probably crop. I'll go in, I would take this little thing out. So just to make, it's still a studio shot. It's okay to have a studio shot. But maybe for this one, I come in, just crop it up. Don't crop her foot out. Leave that in there. And maybe crop this down some. Right there on the rule of thirds, line that up. Hit crop. Now I could clone this out. So I could take this little piece here, just Alt, click, and just clone it out. Clean that up a little bit. I could clone stamp out these wires. I don't like that. Could even put this up more so it's a little more strength as I'm cloning. And I could go on and on. So just as a review, some basic things that I always do. Image adjustments, brightness and contrast. I could try the color balance or hue saturation. Maybe I want the color just a little less, not so colorful. I could tone it down a little bit. That's always something to think about. to hard light. So changing up the light, changing up the setting, I felt like this one looked pretty good just black and white after I made some other little tweaks around. Like right here underneath her chin, she had some hair kind of coming down from the other side, but it was kind of messing with the shape of her chin. So I just went ahead and kind of smoothed this out with the brush and the mixture of the clone stamp. I smoothed those two things out to just kind of give you a stronger chin point there. So there's all different types of things you can think about as you're going through and making edits. But the little select subject option, that was pretty cool. I never actually had done that before, but normally I would go in and do a quick selection to select things and make edits. So you have, as a review, you have your little eyedropper, your brush tool where you can play with the opacities and the strengths. You have the clone stamp, your dodge, burn, and sponge, your magnifying glass to zoom in or out. So you can actually technically use it up here, zooming in, or let's go back to this one. You could zoom out, or when you're really zoomed in, like say you happen to zoom in, then to get back, you could just hit fit screen, and that'll bring you back to here. But those are some starter things. So play around with your toolbar, and then also up here at the very top, you have, don't forget about these options under the image adjustments. Try those during your editing process. Will definitely improve your images. Make sure you save them correctly when you save them out. Thanks for watching.